Today I'm going to be speaking about Sasquatch, obviously. I don't really like to use the word Bigfoot because to me it's kind of comical, and I mean, I understand where it came from, and they really do have big feet, so I mean, it makes sense, but to me it's not really respectful. The longer, for myself, the longer that I do research, the more respectful I become, because, you know, there's such a wide range of belief out there from researchers. There are researchers who believe these are more apish creatures, all the way to people who believe that these are multi-dimensional spiritual beings. And truly there's evidence all across the board for all of it. I've worked with witnesses, probably at least 100 witnesses that I've done sketches for. You're going to see some of them today. There's some on my website. And I think when I started, I kind of, since most of the witnesses I was working with at the time, and this was back in 2008, I became an investigator with the B.F.R.O. And the B.F.R.O.'s line at the time, and I think still is that these are some kind of an ape. And you know, so I kind of bought the party line at first, but the longer I started working with witnesses, the less I bought that line, because of the incredible amount of intelligence that was, you know, frequently displayed, especially at habituation sites. And an habituation site is a site where, you know, there are people who kind of believe they're habituating the Sasquatch. What's really true is the Sasquatch is kind of habituating you. And that's people feeding them, sometimes gifting, you know, where they live on a location where they have frequent activity with these beings. I actually am fortunate enough to live on a site like that has a 40-year history of interaction. I quit a full-time job as a teacher, special ed and art teacher, to go. This opportunity occurred for me, and I'm like, okay, I'm gone. I mean, I knew if it came up, I would be the researcher to go. So I'm there, been there 3.5 years, and there's definitely a very paranormal component. And I don't really talk about that a lot, except here I feel very comfortable because of the, you know, the background of the show. I feel very comfortable saying, yes, there's some things about this that are very paranormal. And I can't say, you know, who knows why, but I'm pretty convinced that this is not just, I mean, this is definitely not just an ape. There's no way that this is just an ape. This is the B.F.R.O, the Bigfoot Field Researchers page. This is how originally I got started. I mean, I've always been, had a lifelong interest in cryptids and just mysterious things. As a child, I had some things happening around me that nobody else seemed to be, but I kind of had my mind open as a child that there were things unseen that I was seeing that nobody else was, and I knew I wasn't crazy. I was very well grounded. I just knew that there was things I was sensitive to that other people weren't, and there were beings that would visit me, and you know, it was crazy, but I won't go into all that. If you do go to visit the B.F.R.O page, you'll notice right up here there's a little box that says expeditions. I do lead expeditions. I'm from Texas originally, so I lead expeditions in Texas, my home state, and we have had phenomenal activity on the expeditions. We've been in the Sam Houston National Forest, which is just north of Houston. The last expedition was in October. We had one team of people had a Class A sighting, and a Class A sighting is a visual, like at night. 2 people had thermal cameras, there was night vision, and then people saw the silhouette with their naked eyes. So, you know, you can't, when you're doing an expedition, you can't always say, it's kind of like a fishing trip or a hunting trip. You can't always say that you're going to get activity, but we've been really, really blessed. But you can, if you are interested in going on an expedition, they're all throughout the United States. It's how I got started. But I have to warn you, you know, it gets in your blood. And if your partner is not supportive, I've seen lots of divorces between investigators because their wives or husbands don't, you know, because you spend a lot of time out in the field with other people at night and weekends, and it just gets in your blood. You find yourself, you know, and that's how I got started, is I found this website and I would find myself up at 2 in the morning, like reading reports. Oh, just one more report. You know, and I read all the reports in Texas, and then I read, you know, Oklahoma, Louisiana, New Mexico, and then you know, Pacific Northwest. But you know, what I discovered just after a brief time, like say 6 months of reading reports, was that someone in Washington State was reporting the same thing as somebody in East Texas. And these people aren't talking to each other. I mean, as a matter of fact, sometimes there'd be a sighting in 1960 that would be, reoccurring in the Pacific Northwest, and they'd be describing exactly the same looking creature. They'd be describing the exact same kind of behavior. So I've always believed in these things, especially after seeing the Patterson footage when I'm not even going to say how old I was because then I date myself, but I was preteen. And I remember instantly thinking, this is a real creature. There's no, they didn't have the capacity back then to create such an elaborate costume. So I just knew, and I never doubted. And then when I found this website, it was like all said and done, I just found myself. You can click on reports recently added, and because as investigators we are being bombarded after Finding Bigfoot, the show. Has anyone seen the show Finding Bigfoot? Yeah. Well, I know it's a really goofy show. I have been on at least 10 expeditions with Matt Moneymaker, and he is exactly the same way on the show as he is in person. There's no change. What you see is what you get. That is Matt to a T. He's just like that. And Cliff Berkman, just the salt of the earth guys. I met Renee and Bobo too. Bobo was really he was kind of out there, like Bobo is. And he's so tall. I mean, I'm like, hi, Bobo. But anyway, you can go to Sightings by region, so you can read whatever state you want, and then they're also by county. So you can go back, look in your county and see if there's any sightings in your county. And just because there's not, that doesn't mean it's not happening there. A lot of people don't report sightings. I think only maybe 10 or 15% of people actually report sightings. I think it's higher now than it was 10 years ago, because now people at least know there's a database to report it to. I think 10 years ago they didn't. And there's still a lot of people who believe that they get made fun of a lot. I still hear that. And then another thing I'm hearing a lot is I don't want to file a report because I don't want the TV cameras at my house, which I understand that too. There's sound recordings here. There's a place to report a sighting. There's just some information here about the B.F.R.O. And it's really good stuff. This is what you have to watch out for, though. It will get you. It's the Squatchaholism. That's what happens whenever you spend way too much time. It's usually to the detriment of your personal health, definitely your pocketbook, and personal relationships and social standing. It's kind of a joke, but it's really kind of not a joke. This is just briefly kind of a definition of what a Sasquatch is. A large, hairy, bipedal, non-human primate. But I have to tell you that the DNA, and we do have DNA results. You hear people say, where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? They just don't know how much evidence we really have. But the DNA is 99 point, and I don't remember exactly what the decimal point is, but it's 99 point something, and it's like 6 or 7 human on the mitochondrial side, which is the maternal side. And then on the nuclear side, which is the male side, it doesn't match up to anything in the DNA database. So they don't know where the male line is coming from, which is fascinating. And some of that DNA from, like there was one site that I worked on in Alabama, habituation site. They got DNA from 2 separate males. For the longest time, there was just one family there. A female with twins was seen with 2 on each hip, male and female and 2 children, and then another male started coming around. And the people that lived there were originally very concerned that this other male coming in was going to, oh, and there was an old female too that was being seen. They got DNA from both males, and they both originated in Africa, but from 2 separate regions in Africa. So I mean, that's pretty fascinating. Its massiveness, its deviation from human bearing, and different gait leave no doubt in the mind of the people who have seen them that what they are seeing is different from any known creature that they've ever seen before. When you work with witnesses, they will tell you, I know what I saw, and I know it wasn't a bear, You know, I know it wasn't another human being. Human beings aren't that massive, and human beings can't move that fast. And human beings, and even people who didn't even have a sighting but have heard them being close enough to be yelled at or growled at or screamed at, they will tell you the volume of air that they heard, the volume and breath of air. There's no way that this was a human, what they heard. And the way it rattled their bones. You know, people will feel they will feel it in their body. And I've actually had that happen myself, where I have, I believe I got hit with infrasound, and it started as just a low moan, and then all of a sudden, all of the bones in my body, my rib cage, everything, kind of like if you stand in front of speakers, like huge rock concert speakers, and the subwoofers are, you know, it's like turned all the way up. And that's kind of what it felt like that hit my body. And I mean, I had to grab the back of the truck because I almost lost my, you know, almost fell. And all the hair stood up on my body, and I was like shaking all over from some external force. You know, at the time, I remember trying to tell people about it. There was people relatively close to me, and they didn't hear a thing. And there was a guy up in the pickup bed, and I was looking at him, expecting him to turn around and say, "What the was that?" Because to me, it was this huge sound, and it, you know, affected my body in such a, you know, the physiology of my body in such an incredible way. I couldn't believe he hadn't felt it or heard it. And he could tell by the look on my face that I was very shook up. And, you know, so I tried to describe, and he said, "You just got hit with infrasound." And so, fortunately, I wasn't one of those people. There are some people who have been hit with infrasound who have had blood in their urine for at least a week. I know of 2 researchers that have had blood in their urine after they got hit with infrasound. So, infrasound, do you know what infrasound is? Infrasound is it's a sound wave, but it's a frequency that our ears can't hear. Like elephants can do it, tigers, lions, they can also make the sound. And infrasound can travel through things. You know, it can travel through buildings, glass. Some people have claimed that the military has developed it as a weapon because it can travel through things, travel long, long distances. This is just a brief witness sketch. This is a sketch of a Bigfoot from Florida. Unfortunately, the lights, I wished I could like turn the lights off right here because you cannot see the amazing detail that's in this image. You know, I'm going to be, my booth is just right over there. If anybody wants to come see these images so you can see how detailed they are, because they're unfortunately going to get washed out here. This is in Florida. This man was a young man when he saw this creature. It was kind of, it kind of terrorized the neighborhood for a while, and they believe that wildfires in the Everglades, this happened, you know, quite a few years back. Wildfires in the Everglades had pushed at least this one guy out. And right before or right after this happened, there was a bull who had his head ripped off and was thrown like 50 yards. So the officers in this area were kind of aware that there was a creature. This young boy, he was a young boy at the time. This creature came up to his living room window. It was a large picture window, and he doesn't know whether it saw himself reflected in it, and because he did this he screamed and he did this predator stance kind of like thing. So he doesn't know if the thing was just looking at himself or if it's the first time he's ever seen himself. He really doesn't know. But then it did this big thing, and then it roared, and then it went to the back of the house and disappeared into the woods. And he ran to the bathroom and looked out the bathroom window, and he saw it. This man has actually seen 2 different Sasquatches. He had another sighting. So this is called Building the Case for Sasquatch based on witness recreations. You know, so we have to ask ourselves, can we really build a knowledge base just on sightings alone? And, you know, my personal belief is that we can. Like I said, my name's Sybilla Irwin. I'm a B.F.R.O. field investigator, lifetime outdoor enthusiast. I'm actually kind of a tomboy. I have had a childhood of paranormal experiences, and I think that lends itself to being very open-minded. And I think being open-minded is a good thing. I think there's a lot of things about what we call reality that'll probably you know, in our lifetime or maybe in our grandchildren's lifetime, they'll go, God, I can't believe you guys actually believe that. You know, I think there's going to be some things discovered. I'm a graduate of Texas A&M University. I'm an Aggie. Professional artist and photographer. I call myself an art channel because there's sometimes things come through me that I get up from a painting and I don't know who did that. It wasn't me. I'm not capable of some of the things, or at least it feels that way. There's something very real that is leaving behind physical impressions, footprints, hair, scat, audio, doing interesting things with sticks, killing deer, hogs. You know, there's something. I don't know how many have heard of Jeff Meldrum. Dr. Jeff Meldrum. You've probably seen him on. He does a lot of History Channel things. He is a specialist in bipedal motion, and he's considered an expert in his field. And you know, he really put his career on the line, saying that he believed in Sasquatch because he is an Idaho, tenured professor, and it was kind of a dangerous thing for him to do career-wise. But he was one of those people who were really kind of sitting on the fence until one day he was called by an investigator and saying, "There's a trackway out here, and you need to come see it." And he's written an excellent book, Where Legend Meets Science. It's a great book. It's also, I think there's been a TV documentary made. It's a great show. Anyway, so what he discovered when he went to this trackway is that, of course, obviously they were huge, but he discovered dermal ridges. And when he discovered dermal ridges in the footprint, in the mud of these footprints, it clicked for him, and he jumped off the fence. He said, "There's no way." This trackway was it was really long, like quarter mile or something. And he said, and in every footprint, there was a real foot interacting with the surface, of the terrain. He said it wasn't, someone with a wooden foot couldn't get the movement that he saw. And then he saw the dermal ridges, not only in one, but he would find dermal ridges in all of them. And from that point, he became a believer that there is something out there leaving this. And he makes a really good point in his book. He said, of all the thousands of footprints that people have seen and cast, if just one of them is real, then what we have, in fact, is a real creature who's leaving behind, real evidence. Something is also spiral fracturing deer legs. And a spiral fracture has very specific, if you take a bone and you break it and you make a spiral fracture, it looks a very certain way. And I guess it's more common, people are finding deer. There was one place I worked at where I was researching with this woman. She had 2,100 acres. It's in Southwest Texas. And we found on her property, there was a place where there were 3 deer that were all killed in exactly the same way. And she at first thought, well, she was kind of close to the border of Texas, and we first thought, well, maybe there's people poaching. But this didn't happen close to a road. This happened right in the middle of her 2,100 acres. But so the closer we got, one of them had its head, the brain was removed. And I originally thought, well, maybe there was just someone who took the horns. Well, we lifted up her skirt and it was a her, it wasn't a him. So something, took the brain out of this individual, took the back strap, and took all the major organs, the heart, the liver, all the organs, left the intestines, but all the major organs, where all the nutrients are, those were gone in every single animal, except for one of them, which was a fawn, and just still had the spots on, and every single leg was from the knee was gone. So all 4 of the legs below the knee were gone, and that's all. I mean, she was perfectly fine every other way except, and you just stand there puzzled. Why would somebody do that? There was a man who was leasing her property, and she got him the next day to go out there and said, what do you think about this? And he said, this is not poachers. And then when they got there, there was another deer that was also killed the same way. And so I got to talking with this man, and he said, he said, do these things eat pigs? And I said, yeah, they do. And he said, because one of the hunters shot a pig, and the pig, they saw where the pig fell. One of the guys walked up to the pig. It was obviously dead. They went back to the truck to get, they were going to gut the pig. And when they came back, the pig was gone. And there was no drag marks. Something had picked up this 250-pound pig and walked off with it. This is actually, unfortunately, you can't really see it in this. Oh, here we go. This is a kill scene, and this was, I swear, this was like the bloodiest thing I've ever seen. It was, this was really across the creek from a place where I do a lot of research, which is about 1.5 miles from where I live. And this was along a deer trail, and what it looked like right at this area, right up in here, there was blood splattered everywhere. There was hair everywhere. There was blood all over the saplings, and there was a handprint where you could see where hands grabbed the sapling. I mean, you could see bloody fingers. And the deer was, and right here where this arrow is, was a stick that had a bloody, the edge of it is totally blooded up, and it was laid on a big flat rock. I mean, it looked just like a crime scene. And this deer the ham was eaten. We kind of believe that we interrupted the hunt. The ham was eaten, the backstrap was eaten, the heart was eaten, and the liver was eaten. It was pretty gross, actually.
Eating the organs rather than...
Yes. This is the, please don't do that again. Why is it doing that? Cannot figure out. That's just a little bit of close-up. See how another thing, the deer ribs, the ribs, like none of the ribs were broken, like all the meat was taken off, but none of the ribs, and the deer rib is not a very thick bone, but none of them were broken. All the deer ribs were like perfectly in place, almost like they had been picked clean. It was very odd. This was the stick. As you can see, there's like blood all over that rock and blood all over the leaves. I mean, it was really, really pretty amazing. This was a handprint, and unfortunately the way it loaded in this software, I don't know if you can see, but like right up in here, there's like fingers. Can y'all see, like right in here, there's fingers here and fingers here. Yeah. And this was left on a rock between like where the crime scene, I call it a crime scene, where the kill scene, and because it was just like a crime scene, where the kill scene was, and between the creek, this handprint was right there on this big rock. It was amazing. And then of course there's the thousands of sightings that are being reported. Before finding Bigfoot, we could kind of keep up with the sightings in the Texas database. We had like 6 investigators throughout Texas, and Texas is a big place. But we were kind of keeping up with them, and then finding Bigfoot happened and like just forget about it. I mean, we have thousands of reports. If you guys, if you file a report and you don't get instantly heard back from, it's not because they didn't believe you, it's just because we are like so inundated. Texas still just has 6 investigators to cover the entire state. And if you've ever been to Texas, from Houston north up into to the east of Louisiana and to all the way up to Oklahoma is basically just wooded area, and there's sightings happening every day, thousands and thousands, and they're all reporting basically the same behavior over and over again. And that's our job as researchers, is to find those patterns. And like I said, these people aren't talking to each other. They're filing reports from all across the country, describing the same patterns over and over again. All of these people can't be lying, and all of them can't be crazy. And I've worked with doctors, lawyers, Border Patrol, nurses, a district attorney, a NASA engineer. I mean, I've worked with people from all walks of life. Very, very credible, like, salt of the earth kind of people. One thing I find is interesting is that native populations throughout the world are generally the first to report a species like the lowland gorilla or the mountain gorilla, and people on the outside aren't believing them at first, and then generally it proves to be true that that really is happening just the way they said. And a sighting has a wellspring of data. The size is, we see ranges from size from 10 feet tall to even 4 feet, and sometimes little infants have been reported. The shape, the height, the weight, torso, facial features, these things are being reported by people that aren't, like I said, aren't talking to each other all over the place. I'll try to move quickly. I know you guys are, there's a lot to cover. And, I get asked time and time again, well, where's the physical evidence? Thousands and thousands of tracks, thousands of people who are casting them now, which is really good. Sometimes we go to shows together and we compare our, the casts that we have. But mostly, it's individuals, volunteers out there who are doing this. And, who do they take it to? Usually they just kind of keep it in their closet and they're not really sharing it with anybody. Even within the B.F.R.O, we're all out there making casts, and I have casts that, the other fellow investigators have never seen. But they do. We have had a lot of audio that has been analyzed by experts. There's a man at Texas A&M who does bio, we will send him, he's a bioanalyst. He analyzes audio of different, various species, and we have sent him some of our recordings, and he will put them in a spectrograph and look at them and listen to them through very, very expensive and extensive equipment, and he will come back and say, I have no idea what this is, or this is not known. And actually his name is Joe, and he's actually been on a couple of shows, Bigfoot shows, because he kind of got into it that way. People were sending him recordings of these things, not knowing where they were coming from, and so that's kind of how he got into it. We find stuff like this out in the woods, stick structures. That's obviously not made by just the wind. Something put those sticks, they're different kinds of wood. Something put those sticks there. How did they do that? Or why? We don't know. That's one of my favorite. This is just the range of behaviors observed: hunting, fishing, carrying off farm animals, taking failed quarry, hogs. A lot of people in Texas anyway, Texas, Arkansas, Florida, hogs are just overrunning the place. So sometimes people just shoot them and leave the corpses, or drag the bodies there. Because some of these huge, they get like the size of a pony. They don't taste good, but because so they'll just drag the carcass somewhere and leave it and come back, and the carcass will be gone. And again, there's no drag marks. They will raid gardens. I have a peach tree that gets raided every year. And just about the time I'm ready to go pick peaches, I will come out the morning before the limbs are on the ground because they're so heavy with peaches. I'll come out the next morning and every single peach off that tree will be gone. Every single, I have photographs of it, but every single peach will be gone when you never know when they're going to do it. And that happens really frequently, where the trees will be robbed. Dog food, if you have dog food out in a container, they will, and they're really smart about it. They will lift up the lid, they'll take some, they'll put the lid down. Sometimes they'll take the whole container and you'll never see it again, or sometimes you'll find it like a quarter mile away. They have been seen dumpster diving. They do window peeking. They'll peek behind trees, they'll look at you from behind trees. There are some of them, and I don't know, maybe they're just the juveniles, but they love to, some of them are curious about people. And sometimes if you want these things to come around and you camp, just act like regular campers. If you act like you're a hunter, or you go into stealth mode, like you're gonna sneak up on these things, they know what you're doing. Or they may come in and check you out, but the best thing to do is just act like a regular camper. They will parallel hikers and campers on the trail. Sometimes there will be territorial aggression. I think especially if they have family. I get asked a lot, do these things, are they dangerous? Do they kill people? I absolutely believe that anything and everything can be dangerous. Have they killed people? Yes, that has been recorded. Are there people being killed today? I absolutely believe there are. That's just my opinion. We were recently in the Sam Houston in an area that got taped off because 4 young men were hunting in that woods and 2 of them did not make it out alive. And the 2 that did make it out alive heard what was going on, but they didn't. It was dark, they didn't know what was going on, and so two kids made it out and 2 didn't. And The only reason I know what happened is one of my really good friends that researches down in the Sam Houston is an administrator of a hospital, and he was told by 2 policemen. Yeah, so have they been aggressive? Yes. I've talked to several hunters that have told me if I didn't have a gun with me, I probably wouldn't be here to tell the story. Mike Woolley, write down Mike Woolley. Go to YouTube, type in Mike Woolley and listen to his story. I did witness sketches for him. Very, very credible man, very believable, and he's the one that told me that if I didn't have a gun with me, I probably wouldn't be here, because he interrupted a hunt, not on purpose, but and then he made the mistake of putting his scope up to look to see if it was somebody in a suit or a real creature, and when he put his gun up, it really ticked this thing off. And there were actually 2 of them, and it was pretty scary. They will throw rocks. They will throw rocks sometimes as kind of a playful thing, but they will sometimes throw rocks and limbs and lots of other things. In one of our expeditions in the Sam Houston, a tree was pushed down. The top of the tree landed 15 feet from where a group was standing. It was a huge tree too. It was a big round tree. It was dead, but it was pushed, right where these people were standing. And of course, this was in the dark, so I mean, it just scared it scared the heck out of them. Road crossings are probably the most common sighting. The people who see them the most are probably hunters. Hunters probably see them the most, but then a lot of drivers see them. They will slap your house. I have had my house slapped, and recently, like 2 weeks ago. No, because I have a brick house. I have a brick house, but it woke me up. I mean, it was like bam, it was 5 times, bam, 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 at 12:12 in the morning. And I had just gone to sleep. I just turned the light off in my bedroom, and bam, 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 and it scared me to death. I live way out in the country. Yeah, and my neighbors know I have guns in my house, so they would never do such a thing, because they know I'll use them. Something happened in 2009. I was working with a man who has seen multiple Bigfoot in Washington State, and he is a fly fisherman. So he goes out by himself all the time, and so he had multiple sightings. But this one, and I'll show you the picture. I wish you just can't see the details very well. You'll have to come by if you want to. But she's got really big eyes. Yeah. She's got beautiful, beautiful eyes, and he used to see her all the time. He was an only child. He was 5 years old. He would go down by himself and play on the creek bed. And this female, I guess she just got used to him, and she realized he was not a threat. So she would show himself to him, and then eventually, after like a period of a couple of years, she had a baby, and she actually let him see the baby too. So I did this witness sketch for him, and then. The crazy thing is that other people also kept picking that same sketch as a base. When I work with witnesses, what I do is I get them on the phone with him, and I say, do you have at least an hour? And because I ask them really detailed questions, I have to build a picture in my mind of what they look like in order to draw them and sketch them. And then after I get all the details, then I ask them to go to my webpage, and I'll say, well, see if there's any sketches there that kind of resonate with what you saw. And sometimes they'll say, well, the eyes of this one look like what I saw, but this is like more the nose, or this mouth, or had this shape of the head. So then I'll do a whole new composite. And what started happening is people kept picking that same one from that Washington witness. I've had like 8 different people pick that same one, which kind of led me to believe that maybe there's some accuracy to that sketch that the others don't have. Tennessee was there's a man 2 children in Tennessee, and you can't really see it, but right down here, there's a big, it looks like either a big abscess or like her jaw was broken, or its jaw was broken, or maybe it had a bad tooth or something. It had a big swollen area, and it was so swollen that it was like drug its lip down, and its teeth on the bottom showed. But it looks just like the Washington one, only its hair was different. And then a Georgia witness picked the same one, only he said the teeth were real canine, and he actually saw ears. Most Bigfoot witnesses don't see ears. Very few have seen ears, but he saw ears and he saw canines, and this thing was squatted down. He was in his car, and this thing was squatted down in a ditch, and it it was kind of mad that he saw it. I guess sometimes they react when people see them. This was a second Washington witness. This poor guy got screamed at from like 8 feet. He was in his truck, he was driving, he was actually hunting. He had just dropped his son off and his son's girlfriend, and he saw like a patch of red in the ferns, so he turned his truck around. And when he did, this thing, I guess it kind of felt like, well, there's really no place for me to go, so I'm gonna just stand up and let the guy know I'm here. So he stood up, and he said this thing was kind of looking across his truck first, and he kind of feels like maybe some of its family members were on the other side of the road, and he was looking to see whether they got out of the way. And then he like said, "Oh my God," and this thing looked right at him and made eye contact then it opened its mouth and screamed, it like roared at him. And he said like he could see the uvula in the back of its throat, just like we have. And he said his ears rang for like 3 days. And you know, he's a person who's been in the woods all of his life, and he had to go get like psychological help to deal with the fact that he was, you know, it's like he realized I'm not the apex predator here in this woods. And it seems to be the men that struggle with it the most, or like, you know, the men who have felt like they're the apex predator in the woods, and then suddenly the fabric of their reality is kind of ripped because this thing is massive. You know, what's often described is the shoulders are like 4 to 5 feet in width. Generally a neck is not seen. It's like the head is just like a football player with shoulder pads, kind of like, and they get described that way a lot. And generally when they turn, they really don't turn with much of a neck. They generally turn their whole torso, and kind of like a barrel chest. Some people will kind of describe a V. They're generally described as very athletic, but just massive. That's probably, if there's a word I hear the most as an investigator and an artist, is massive. This thing was massive that I saw. They will describe from here, this part of the shoulder, to the back as being sometimes 12 inches wide. I mean, imagine the mass, you know, just the mass. People ask me about the smell. Not everybody smells. And I've had to like walk right up to my tent, never smelled a thing. Most people don't smell things. You know, the gorillas have a gland in their arm where the gorillas can release a scent if they want to, and these things might do the same thing. A Montana person picked the same sketch. I really didn't make any changes except making the head a little more conical. Are there multiple types of Sasquatch? I actually believe that there are multiple types. I believe that there's some that are closer to maybe the ape family, some that have more, some that are, I've only done one sketch that really looked apish. The others look more like a combination between an ape and a human. And then some have been described as being very beautiful. How about that? This is the one that was like the most ape-like. This is a former Marine, saw this, and scary, scary story. If you can see, he's got scars across his head. He was actually missing these 2 fingers as well. He said, I had a really bad feeling the whole time I was out there. He said, I couldn't wait to get back in my truck. He said, I got in my truck, and just as I'm starting to pull away, this thing steps out in front of my truck, and he's doing this he's doing this stance. And he gritted his teeth like this. He like showed the guy his teeth, and he got in this kind of he said, because I was, you know, when I'm trying to draw him, he says, well, just think of a football stance. It was like in a football stance, and then it shielded its eyes from my headlights. So I asked him, and he described this one as not, you know, most people will say that the hair on the body is like 3 or 4 inches on the body and longer, like more of a fringe coming down on the side, like the arms. He said, but this thing he could see bare skin, and I don't usually hear that. Mostly I hear that it was covered up. And I asked him, I said, well, why do you think it showed itself to you? And he said very clearly, it wanted me to know this is my territory and don't come back here, like ever. So I asked him, have you ever gone back? He said, not ever. He said, you know, the thing let me live, because he could have taken me out any time, but he said the thing let me live, and I'm going to respect, you know, he respected me, I'm going to respect him, and he's never gone back. That's just a side-to-side facial comparison, and unfortunately you just can't see it that well because of all these lights. But on one side, on the right side, it looks kind of like the trolls that we used to play with as little kids, you know, they had the little trolls like that had the fuzzy hair. So that one on the right looks a little bit like a troll, and of course the other one. And this one was a real peaceful sighting too. This guy was a hunter, and he was in his tree stand, and he kind of noticed some movement, and he looks through his scope, and this thing is just looking at him from behind a tree. And he said it had a peaceful, like, here we go. This was like very peaceful. He didn't feel scared. It wasn't being aggressive. They were just, he was just observing him. But look at this, this guy is like get the heck out and stay the heck out. Don't ever come back. This is the artwork I did for Mike Woolley. If you ever get, please write down Mike Woolley and go to YouTube and watch his story, because it's amazing, his story. And he said what he saw was more like Native American in the facial structure, and it was mad. It was really mad. And there were two of them, and they chased him. He just barely survived it. This is from Missouri, I think. This is a great story too, and I'll say it real fast because I know I'm going to run out of time. But this guy, his parents had some property. Nobody had been out to that property for years. He drove out to it to decide whether he was going to keep it or sell it. And he got out there really early in the morning. He was in his car. He was coming around a corner, and there was a little animal in the middle of the road. And he thought it was a bear, and he honked his horn. And out of the right-hand part of the road came this female walking. And he said she took one step. And a mom would pick her baby up like this. But this thing, and you can't make this stuff up, this thing took one step, grabbed the baby this way, and threw the baby on her back. And the baby brought her legs up underneath her, like the baby doubled her legs up and grabbed his mom's shoulder hair and down. So he said in 3 steps, she did all this and she was gone. And he just couldn't believe what he saw. He stopped his car, he got out, and he was standing there listening, and he was still just in awe of what had just happened. And then a rock hits the top of his car. And he turns around, and this male is, right like 4 feet behind the back of his car. And it let him live, obviously. Scared him to death. This is a human-like one. This was Justin Smeha. If anybody's heard about Justin Smeha, he claims to have killed 2 Sasquatches, one that was an adult that looked like this, and a baby. And, when I listen to Justin Smeha talk now, it's nothing like how he sounds like when I was working with him. When I was first working with him back in 2011, he was a completely different individual.
So I watched before.
He was kind of yes, but he was not like that when I was working with him. When I was working with him in 2011, he was still really, really struggling with it. It had been like a year after he'd shot him, and he was still he was so remorseful. He was really torn up about it. He was really struggling emotionally with what he'd done, and I remember getting off the phone after one conversation I had with him, and I told my best friend, I hope he's got strong family support, because he's not going to make it. I mean, he was just emotionally, he was a train wreck. And, now he's really callous, but that's not who I was dealing with. And that's why I believe him. I don't know that we know the whole story. I think there's probably more to it, but I do think that he definitely shot the adult, and I think he shot the little one. And when I was working on the sketch of the little one, and he was telling me about what happened, he looked into the eyes of this thing as it was dying, and it tore him up. Yeah, I mean, it changed his life. And I said, Justin, what did you think? I mean, when you're looking through the scope at this thing, what were your thoughts? And, he used the F word. He says, I'm going to apologize. He said, I thought it was an effing monster, and it shouldn't be here. And then he pulled the trigger. That's Mike Woolley's guy. Not happy, he said he could see the eyelashes. When he looked through the scope at this thing, he could see the eyelashes. That's the body of the one that Justin Smeha shot. Obviously it looks very human, but he felt it was a monster. This is what I call a combination of kind of the apish and the human. This was a great story. A man, a Native American in North Texas, this thing was standing outside of his house, right on the other side of the fence. And the man had stepped out. He had a big pail of chicken feed. He was going to feed his chickens, and this thing is just standing there swaying back and forth. And he just backs right back up in his house and closes the door. and never even occurred to him to take a picture. This thing was out across the fence for like 30 minutes, and it never occurred to him to take a picture. He just went back inside, fixed a cup of coffee, smoked a cigarette, looked back out of the window, and it had backed up a little bit, and it squatted down, and it had taken some roots, and it was bashing some roots against some rock. And he thought, well, gosh, maybe it's hungry. So he had some red potatoes. He got his shotgun, he got his red potatoes, and he walked outside, and he stood there with his shotgun, and he kind of slowly made his way, and the thing stood back up. And so he took one of the red potatoes and he threw it, and the thing went and got it, and he said it looked at it and sniffed it and licked it and then popped it in his mouth and ate it. So he threw all the other potatoes that he had to it. It picked up every single one and then turned and walked off. And then it got, you know, three or four steps, and then it turned and looked at him and grunted like thank you, and then it walked off. And the guy was so freaked out he sold his farm a month later. He said, because I have grandchildren and I was afraid that they would, like, you know, he was afraid. This is what it looked like when it was squatted down. This is just 2 examples of some little ones that I did. This was Justin Smejas on this side. You can't see the detail very well. This was a Michigan, this was a great story. This couple were picnicking by a lake. They have like 7 children. And they set their cloth down at the base of a tree, and they had been out there like all day, and they had been picnicking, and the kids playing in the water, and they were kind of starting to gather things up to leave, and a stick like fell out of the tree right on top of the picnic blanket. And they look up, and there's this little thing up in the tree, and like it was sitting like its legs were here, and its back was up against a tree, and its knees were pulled up. And the mom is a really good friend of mine. Her name is Kim, and she was afraid. She knew it was a baby something, and she was afraid that, well, if the baby's here, mom's somewhere around. So she gathered up her kids and raced them to the van. Well, her husband was just mesmerized by the eyes. He locked eyes with this thing, and he couldn't look away. And he just kept talking to it, and it was smiling, and it was eating something and just looking down. I know, and he actually took a picture of it. And he had, you know, it was just a silhouette. I got to see it. You really couldn't tell much, but, you know, it was just really cool. It was a neat experience. This is just examples of a juvenile. Both of these are from Texas. This one is, no, I'm sorry, this is from Oklahoma. This is from Jasper, Texas. Look at the difference. One looks so much more humanoid. The other looks so much more apish. This is older adults. I've done images of older adults. This was Alabama. This was California. This one in California, a man was driving, and he was kind of in a traffic jam late at night. I think there was an accident, and all of a sudden this thing just walks by this guy. Oh, actually it was coming this way because he saw its face, and it just kind of, you know, it just kind of looked at him, and he looked at it, and he's sitting there in his car like, oh, what did I just see? Their eyes seem to fall into 2 categories, like really, really round and deep set, or more almond, like more almondish. Most people will tell me their eyes are huge, and most don't report like the sclera, like the white part of the eye. Mostly just the whole iris takes up, with a very, very large pupil, which probably allows in a lot of light, because these things have an amazing night vision. We also believe they can see in the infrared range. And one of the reasons we say they can see in the infrared range is because it's been reported, like Matt Moneymaker actually put an infrared flashlight at one place because he was doing some filming, and one of the Sasquatches came up and shielded its eyes from the infrared light. So from that we kind of believe that they can see in infrared because it knew it was there. The nose is basically described as flat, sometimes kind of turned up, but usually very wide, like very wide nostrils. And sometimes there's no, right here, what's that called? Yeah, and a brow ridge usually very prominent, but this area right here is usually is non-existent. The mouth is, without exception, most people describe their lips as very wide and generally really thin, sometimes very, very rough and cracked. Teeth are generally described as being very, very large, like cow teeth, like very, but really mostly like human teeth, only huge. And then sometimes canines are seen. Forehead, sometimes the forehead is very, very large. Sometimes the hair starts right there, like where the brows are, and the hair can grow in 2 different patterns. The hair either seems to come forward, or the hair, like all the hair will be going back. Like sometimes they have bangs. This is a guy, we call him Slash, because this hair comes forward, like the guitar player Slash. This is the most common hair pattern I see, like this, where it kind of comes forward, like that. Just other commonalities. Most people do not describe ears, and if they do see ears, they're very small, and usually like really flat against the head. Like they're not out like a chimpanzee's. They're really generally really flat. Most people don't even describe seeing them. You know, it's interesting too is that most people will focus on like one particular aspect. Like sometimes they focus so much on the eyes, they can't really tell me what the mouth looks like. They're like, I was just so focused on the eyes, I don't remember anything else, because I mean this thing was just looking right. Most people say they kind of felt like they were just being, like their soul was being looked into. Yeah. The eye shine, people will describe eye shine as being red or green. Some people even describing what they call as eye glow, which I've experienced eye glow, and I don't know what it is, because, you know, like one time it happened in a tree line, there's no moon, it is so dark, and then you see these 2 glowing white eyes, and nobody's shining a flashlight, like where is this eye, you know, how are these eyes illuminating, because we're not how does it's like self-illuminating, but I can't explain that, but I have experienced it on like 2 different occasions. I don't know what that is, but other people have also described seeing self-illuminating eyes. Matt's even talked about that. Hair color is black, dark brown, red, coyote colored. Justin Smay has said it was coyote colored. White ones have been seen, gray ones we've seen. I've even seen some where like the hair pattern is graying like a human's hair pattern, like our hair patterns. That one was seen at night. Oh, you guys can't even see it. Yeah, but like I said, come to my table and you'll be able to see it really good. Huge, large hands with really, really thick fingers, but obviously really good dexterity. They are so strong. Well, I mean, you know, a chimp is 7 to 10 times stronger than a human being, so you can imagine how strong these are. I've actually seen a tree that was like 11 inches in circumference that was broken about this high off and wrapped around itself 8 times. And it wasn't, none of the other trees were affected, so it wasn't a hurricane or a tornado. Something broke this tree off and wrapped it around itself 8 times. So, I mean, when you think of the strength involved to do such a thing, and why would they do it in the first place, I don't know. I don't know if it's a territorial marker, you know, I don't really know. You know, we could embroidery all these stories with a lot of stuff, but I try not to do that. I really do not know. In fact, you know, with all these things, I've been doing it for this long, I feel like I know less about what these things are now than I did when I started. If you're going to go out there and do some squatching, and you get that feeling of that you need to leave, then you need to leave. You need to trust your intuition. If you get that feeling like you're being asked to leave, just be respectful and leave. Don't push through that. People have put themselves in really dangerous positions by ignoring your intuition. If you feel like you need to leave, you need to leave. Or if things start being thrown at you, or you get screamed at, you definitely need to leave. And it's like Mike Woolley will tell you, do not point a gun at these things. You know, even if you're just looking through the scope, don't point a gun at these things, because they know what guns are, and it really upsets it. Well, obviously, I mean, if someone points a gun at you, you know, I believe that these things are like massively intelligent, and if I had more time, I could tell you about some of the things people have tried. Investigators have tried to get video and audio. Well, audio they don't seem to mind. We get lots of audio, but video, like thermal or night vision, I don't know why, but they seem to know what the cameras are, and they will disable the camera. They will unscrew the cables. They will turn the camera. They will even turn the cameras towards the house. But they know what a camera is, and I don't know why. I do believe sightings are evidence, and I think the data that we collect, as it stacks up, I think I think we can prove that these things exist without having to kill one. I don't believe that. Now, do I believe the government has bodies? I absolutely do. I absolutely do believe there are governmental agencies that have bodies. I've talked to several people that know people where, like, one was actually hit by a car. He called law enforcement. The agency came and picked it up, and he was told to never ever speak about it because they know where he lives and they know where his family lives, and you just keep your mouth closed. There have been lots and lots of those. It's an honor to me to be able to, and a privilege to be able to work with witnesses. My goal is to gather enough intel, like I said, so that one doesn't have to be killed to prove that they exist. Although I do know that that's probably what will have to happen. That someone will kill one, and it won't get confiscated by the government, and the government's just going to have to deal with the can of worms it's going to open. Think of the spotted owl and what happened to when that. My belief is live and let live. If you know someone who's seen one up close and you would love me to do a witness sketch, I would love to work with you. SybillaIrwin.com. You can contact me through there, or that is my email address. And thank you. And I know I don't have a lot of time, but if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. And thank you so much for being here. I do have, if anybody wants to hang around, I think I'm the last one. If anybody wants to hang around, I do have some really interesting videos of amazing stick structures that I could show you. Just things like this. That doesn't happen out in nature all by itself. Something did that. That's just way out in the middle of the woods too. Like, here's a really awesome. This is like right where I live. These kind of little structures. This is probably about this high. Just where the wood. When you see stuff in the woods, and you just know it's something about it doesn't look natural. Just go observe it a little bit closer, and see if you can figure out.
Actually, right here, this one right here is actually.
This is a.
This is the one that's twisted right here.
The top of the tree was actually wrapped around and lashed.
So we have two. This splits right up here. So this one comes down this way. And then you have another one right here.
In a second, you're going to see. See, that was the tip of the tree. It's wrapped around and brought forward and lashed so that the arch was held in place. Absolutely took hands to do that. See, that's the tip of the tree. And then look at the size of this tree. See, other branches go off, and then hopefully, I think I'm going to pan down and you'll get to see the size of this tree. I don't know if these are territorial markers. I don't know why they do this. See there, that's how big that tree is. I mean, this is way out in the middle of the forest. I mean, this is like, why would somebody do this? See, the tip of the tree goes around and then it goes back in on itself. Definitely took hands to do that. That was that guy that saw the mom pick up the baby. That was him. This is a footprint impression from where I live. That's my foot. That's a 16.5 foot, and it's about 7 inches across the top. This part right here, this is not a toe. That's just part of the impression. These are the toes right across there. But you can see the size of that. And that's actually 16.5 is not a really big track. That's kind of average. That's probably a female. The males will be like, people have cast like 22-inch tracks. I mean, can you imagine a 22-inch track? I just can't even imagine. That's